Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, the expansion was just announced, and I thought this might be a good time to do a bit of reflection. Reflection on how well we evaluate cards. Now, we're going to go back to the most recent content release, which was the mini set, and go over my card review that I posted on this channel and see which ones we got right and which ones we didn't. Now, I'm not going to go over every card because I tend to talk quite a bit. And there's just a bit too much content to do for this kind of video. So we're going to go over some of the more hyped up cards from before the Miniset, and of course some of the cards that ended up being quite good, and see what I got to say about them. Alright, first, the Speaker Stomper. Now this one actually got hyped up a little bit, just because it looks like a tradable low feb. So I remember reading on Reddit that people were expecting this card to be very, very good. Let's see what old Jambre has to say. Obviously, we know it's not really seeing too much play.
Next, we've got another neutral, Speaker Stomper. This is a 4-mana 4/4. Tradable battlecry enemy spells cost 2 more next turn, so kind of like a tradable low theb. Certainly looks very, very powerful. Obviously, not having the spells cost quite as much as low theb did, but maybe 2 is enough to prevent the opponent playing them when it comes to big board clears. With Cold Neophyte, it didn't always prevent things coming down because perhaps it was off curve, the board clear that they were using, but this being 2 more might do enough. The kind of deck that you want to run this in would be a fairly aggressive deck, or a deck that cares about making a board and sticking it. But being 4 mana, it kind of takes up a lot of your turns. It's hard to like make a board and play this on the same turn. Main AoEs and things that you want to be avoiding are things like Priest, Blood Decay, Frost Decay as well, where this could be useful. Prevent like Blood Boil, prevent Whirlpool, prevent Frostcomb's Fury. More expensive than Neophyte. Slightly bigger effect, maybe worse stat line, and more expensive. It does come with tradable, but the kind of decks that this wants to go in probably don't want to be spending mana on trading because they're likely to be aggressive decks. And it's a bit too expensive to put into a combo-y deck like Miracle Rogue when they probably just go for Neophyte instead, which is a much cheaper way of doing it. So I don't actually think this is like super strong. It doesn't have a tribe either, so you can't really fit into Menagerie decks, which are generally quite aggressive. So I kind of think this might not see any play at all. We've seen
Yo, I got it right. Not seen any play. I mean, yet. Not seen play yet. Maybe there's a meta where this has some value, but I think some experimentation with the card, obviously, since when it came out. But right now, I don't think any deck lists are running it. So, good job for me there. Okay, next up, we're talking about Magther. I'm comparing it right now to Banishful and Gorlock Ravager.
Gorlock can only draw Murlocs, and the stat line's a bit meh for a 5-drop. Banishful, you have to infuse it, which isn't super easy for a lot of decks, and the attack is a bit low. Only draws 3 as well for both those cards. This draws up to 5 if you're running a very minion-heavy deck, and a 5/5. So it's quite a sizable upgrade on those cards. You do need to be running quite a minion-heavy deck, but you don't have to be running only minions for this to work. Something like Unholy DK really only runs Plague Strike and Grave Strength for their spells, so they could easily slot this card in and be kind of okay with it. Now, giving your opponent your Grave Strength or your Plague Strike is not very, very good.
No, it's not.
Suck quite a lot. If you do the Plague Strike, they might give your opponent a really high tempo play back to you. And losing Grave Strength obviously means maybe you don't have your finisher anymore. But the upside might just be worth it. The fact that you're getting, 5/5 for 5 is just fine stats. And draw 5, like you just get so much gas. And I think if you just run this card and no other card draw effects in very minion-heavy decks like Menagerie decks and things, I think that's all you need. And you're just not going to gas out.
That's true. I mean, that's where it's still play. Kind of obvious to see play there. And it's just generally a good card. I don't think this one was too hard. It's like obviously kind of bonkers, the numbers on it, to get this one right. Does see a bit of play. It's generally one of the better cards in the decks. It does see play, but the deck is designed kind of around the card. And it's generally quite good. Okay, we got finally the legendary neutral, the ETC, which is kind of hyped up just because of its kind of a crazy effect. I don't know if people actually thought this one was going to be particularly good. There's some people talking about it, but I think it's not a good card. No deck seems to be running it right now. Let's see what I got to say.
I kind of joke that this is a bad card because it forces your opponent to play well, and that you want to spend all your mana every time.
True.
Does this have any actual applications in a deck? I think when you look at this, you're kind of thinking, well, I play this in an aggro deck, right? because I want to deal damage to my opponent's face. But I don't think it's going to work too well in an aggro deck, because you're playing, say, an aggro deck against control. Well, you're likely to run out of resources before they are. It's not too hard to spend all your mana as a control deck if you've got more expensive things. When it becomes hard to spend your mana is when you run out of resources in Hearthstone, so that's more likely to happen as the aggro deck. So maybe you play a bit of hot potato with your control opponent, play your board, etc, etc. And then eventually you're going to be the one who runs out of gas, most likely. And then you're just going to be taking the damage to yourself. And on top of that, you're playing a 5-mana 5/5 on curve that doesn't actually do anything for the board state until your opponent can't spend the mana. So I think not a good aggro tool. Maybe in a slower deck. But the thing is, if you're playing a slower deck against a deck that runs out of stuff, well, you're probably in a winning position anyway, just because they've run out of stuff and you've kind of achieved your attrition win condition.
True. I mean, yeah, it doesn't really have a niche to fill, this card. Not good against control, because they can spend their mana. If you're an aggro deck, obviously. If you're a control deck, and you're against an aggro deck, you don't need it. If it's control versus control, usually if they just can't spend their mana, they run out of stuff anyway, so you win. Pretty much. So this is just not really necessary. Doesn't have like a gap to fill for really any deck. That's my take on it anyway. Alright, Hollow Hound. This is obviously a very impactful card for both Hunter and Death Knight. Very strong card, particularly with hand buffs. I hope I rated this well, but who knows if I actually did. We'll see what I have to say.
It's pretty powerful. You can kind of compare this to a combo that terrorized Standard about a year or so ago. Of course he's not. Blademaster Samuro plus Apotheosis, which was a pretty strong combo back then. Kind of like that combo in one card.
Yeah.
The 6 mana. Doesn't affect the whole board, but it attacks minions adjacent and doesn't hit the first minion twice. So quite a bit weaker when I put it like that, but it's just one card to do it. You can hand buff this thing as well to make it do more. Might be quite strong in Blood Decay as a control tool. They do have access to No Munch already. This does slightly better against wider board states. It's going to heal you for 9 immediately and clear maybe a bit more of their board. But against singular minions, it's going to be quite a bit worse. Like 3 attack on 6 mana isn't going to clear too much board-wise. So the Blood Decay is a bit of a maybe. For Hunter, I don't really see it too much. Like Hunter kind of wants to be aggressive. It might be fine if there's a mid-range Hunter deck that struggles a bit against aggro. They might want to put this in the deck just as a stabilization tool. They don't really have access to any good healing effects. So could see it in that sense. It does kind of mess with beast synergy. If you're trying to play a big beast deck with Banjo Saws and Faithful Companions and maybe Sharon Sabers, maybe this is not a big enough pull from some of those effects.
That's not true. It's kind of one you want to pull because it's just so good at shutting down other board decks. Kind of underrated in that sense.
But there is some nice synergy with Harpoon Gun in that if you manage to dredge Hollow Hound on curve, you can play this on for 4 mana. So Weapon into Hollow Hound is a curve.
Actually, decks have decided not to run that package generally with the weapon. Not sure why though.
It looks quite strong, but it just depends what the board states are going to look like, whether this is good enough. Because if you're facing down tall minions, this really isn't going to do anything at all. If you're facing very tokeny decks, it's going to do a lot. So I think meta dependent. It looks kind of decent in the vacuum, but it might not be plugging a hole that the decks need. Blood Decays might just be perfectly happy playing No Muncher and Blood Boil, and they just don't need this kind of effect.
Yeah, okay, I think I got this one wrong. It's a staple, for sure, in both decks, I think. More so in the Hunter, actually, than the DK. I think the DK could get rid of it and be kind of fine still, but the Hunter relies on this quite a bit. So, definitely missed the mark on this one a little bit. Didn't say it was bad, thankfully, but I definitely underrated it. Alright, next we got Rhythm Dancer Reset. I think I've covered this one just because it's a legendary. Let's see what I got to say. I mean, this one is a terrible card. Let's say that. It's been buffed and it's still kind of terrible. I think it looked terrible on first glance, but I hope I back that up with what I say in this video.
We've got Rhythm Dancer Reset. 5 mana 3/5 rush after your hero attacks. Return this to your hand and set its cost to 1. So this is like kind of infinite value card, but in order to get going, you just have a 5 mana attacks to begin with. 5 mana deal 3, and you need to be able to swing with your face. Either in Rogue or Demon Hunter. For Demon Hunter, there are some weapons available that you could run to enable it. And for rogue, you need to have your dagger up. You could also hero power as Demon Hunter, but it'll cost you extra mana. I don't think this is like that crazy good. Is it?
It's not crazy good, it's crazy terrible.
Expensive initial effect, for one thing. And then you've got to spend 1 mana every turn, and the stats that you have on the board afterwards, they don't really stay. You get to basically deal 3 to a minion every turn, as long as that minion has 4 attack or fewer, because if it's a 5/5, you don't actually get to hit into it and bounce this back because your minion dies. So it's not quite infinite value, but maybe a deck like Secret Rogue, which tends to be a fairly attrition-based, would not mind a card like this. Don't know how much they like daggering up. They have lots of secrets and things, so they kind of spend their 2 mana on that instead. So even setting this up is slightly awkward for that deck, because the dagger's just not going to be up most of the time. How good even is it to deal 3 every turn? It has to be to a smallish minion anyway. And big things just don't get affected by this at all. They don't really care. I think it's a little bit too expensive. If it's 4 mana initial cost, sure, but 5, I just don't really see decks trying to play it. Miracle Rogue definitely not going to play it.
I'd said if it was buffed to 4, people would play it, but that's not even true either.
I think most Demon Hunter decks are not going to play this either. Yeah, I think just maybe Secret Rogue could consider it.
Okay, I was being very generous there, I think. I mean, I have kind of correctly evaluated that even Secret Rogue doesn't want to run it, and that they don't dagger onto, but buying into the hype that it was the legendary of the set, I think. Alright, next we're going to do Star Power. This one actually surprised a lot of people in that it was very good for both Mage and Hunter. It's just a lot of removal for 5 mana. Now, I wonder if I could get tricked here, because it's very similar to a card that's seen no play whatsoever in Hunter. Let's find out.
Next, Star Power. 5 mana, deal 5 damage to random enemy minion. Repeat this with 1 less damage. This is a bit of a weird card. It's just kind of a reprint. We're going to 5 for Shell Shot, which has not been a good card. I mean, Hunter gets access to this too, so they have both Shell Shot and Star Power in their class. It is an arcane spell, which has some synergies between Hunter and Mage. Hunter can obviously buff it with their spell power synergies that they got. I think it is a bit better than Shell Shot, because it just more likely to clear off a big board. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's quite a lot, 15 to a board, compared to Shell Shot, which is only going to be 6 to a board. So it kind of scales up quite a bit better.
Yeah.
I think it's like a decent control tool, maybe. Maybe even Hunter could run it.
Whoa! No way I said that. Actually, Hunter could run it. No one was saying that.
Like a slower Hunter deck, maybe Big Hunter.
What?
It's honestly kind of fine. The Mage is kind of decent with the keyboard as well. And Mage doesn't actually have really good hard removal, or AoEs for that matter, right now. So this might fill a hole. Like, they have Blizzard to freeze a board, they have Death Board, which works against small boards. But like for medium-sized boards or big boards, they don't really have much that affects it. So this could certainly help them in terms of dealing with boards. It's of course a bit random where the damage lands. Might not clear up everything you want. But I think it's probably okay, this card.
Okay, wow, actually I'm surprised I got that right. Particularly mentioning the Hunter as well running it. Yeah, I thought I would evaluate that completely different, but apparently not. I mean, I know I rated this bot bad. I'm not going to even do that one. Next we're going to look at Dance Floor. Now Dance Floor, I remember talking in the Vicious Syndicate Discord about this card, because everyone in that Discord seemed to be hyping it up as curing Pure Paladin's weakness. Because once Pure Paladin doesn't have board, they can't get it back. So this cures it, because you give your minions rush, you give your light rays rush, and trade the board back, and you're saved. But it turns out no Paladin's really running it. The only one that kind of runs it is Big Paladin. That deck sucks. So yeah, it turns out it's just too expensive and doesn't do enough for 2 mana to actually be worth running. Like, the effect's just not good enough. Let's see what I got to say.
Right, next we have Dance Floor for Paladin. 2 mana, give your minions rush. 2 charges. This is a location, a new location. Now, I saw a lot of people on Vicious Syndicate Discord going a bit crazy over this card. I think it was Turbo Nuts for Pure Paladin, because what's Pure Paladin's weakness? Well, when they get off the board, it's really hard to come back on the board, so this maybe allows you to do that. But I didn't really like the card in Pure Pally, personally, just because Pure Pally just wants to be playing out stats every turn, and this isn't stats. It is good on like 1 turn, I think, for Pure Pally, and that is the turn when your light rays are costing 0.
Yeah.
But it's 2 mana giving them rush. It's not always necessary to give them rush. They have taunt already, so they do kind of affect the board regardless. But this kind of card is going to be completely dead, I would say, against like a control deck. Priest, for instance, or Blood Decay. He's just not really going to need to give your minions rush against them. So you're going to have this card, and it's going to be in your hand at a lot of matchups, even against aggressive decks. And you're going to have other plays that you can do, and this, and I think you're going to probably pick the other plays most of the time. And this card's not going to do too much. What's more is I think Pure Paladin might go in a different direction with the introduction of the kind of Doomhammer weapon that we're going to get to soon. So there's a lot less reason for them to need to give their minions rush if they're going to rely a bit more on off-board damage for their late game.
Dude, I nailed it.
So I don't think this is going to be that good in Pure Paladin. Maybe you could run it as a one-off, or maybe the Light Rays having rush is too good of a turn to pass up. But I'm not seeing it. What this will be good in, however, but I think is Big Paladin.
Alright, let's stop ourselves there before we get carried away. Okay, we were doing so well, Jambre. We're doing so well. We don't need to talk about Big Paladin being a thing. No, we'll skip that. Now we'll hear
another
what you say.
boost. We saw already a card boosting Big Paladin. But I think this one will help them as well. Big Paladin, again, doesn't do too much early on. That's not important. So they do have the time to play a dance floor instead of doing other plays.
Okay. So I guess I wasn't really hyping up Big Paladin. I was just saying they could run the card, and it does fit well into that deck. It's just the deck sucks. Alright, I was talking about Horn of the Windlord. Let's see what I got to say on that.
Next, we got Horn of the Windlord. I was just mentioning this card. 6 mana, 3/4, Wind Fury. Whenever your hero attacks a minion, set its stats to 3/3. So, as a control tool, you can kill a big thing. 2 big things, in fact, on the same turn. Take 6 damage to do so.
Control tool.
Pretty good. But the big thing is it's just a really good off-board finisher. Especially for Paladin. Not so much for Shaman, because weirdly enough, they've lost their attack buff effects, like Rockbiter Weapon. But for Paladin, they have access to them. And a big one is Feast and Famine. Give your hero +3 attack this turn and lifesteal. So 6 attack twice with lifesteal, 12 healing whilst doing a lot of face damage with this thing. Pretty nice top end for Pure Paladin, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that turns out causing a card to get nerfed. Pure Paladin was the #1 deck after this miniset was released. And it's largely due to this card. They didn't really get too much else going for them. But this just plugged a huge weakness of Paladin, was that when they lost the board before, they couldn't really finish the game, but now with this, it's solved.
And I can imagine seeing Pure Paladin work with a deck with this as their finisher. Probably still run Countess, but you don't need to necessarily run some of the other board buffs, spells and things like that, to finish the game anymore. You just need to equip this weapon, spam some Feast and Famines, and some maybe for Kel'Thalos as well. And then you've got your finisher there.
Yeah, that's how the deck looked.
And in slower matchups, it's going to be very nice because against like a Blood Decay and things, you kind of before always had to stick a board and then try and finish off with buffs like with the Disco Maul and things. But now, you just need to do enough early chip damage and then finish with this weapon, which is pretty nice. And for aggressive matchups, when you lose the board as Pure Paladin, you're done, pretty much. But now, you just need that early chip damage and then you can just finish the game with 1 or 2 of these weapons. This weapon also works really well, I think, with Anachronos.
Yeah.
Because if you equip this weapon and push face damage, you've completely abandoned the board. So, what does your opponent do? Maybe they play some taunts, maybe they just fill up on board and try and race you. Well, you can then follow up with Anachronos and poof the board away and continue doing face damage. And I think that'll be a pretty strong finisher.
Dude, I nailed it. That was exactly how the deck looked as well. Anachronos, only those 2 buff spells. Wow. Alright. I've been doing too well on these, I think. We need to find one where I actually get it massively wrong. What one do I hype up a lot? Maybe I get the Jukebox Totem wrong, because I seem to talk about this one for a while. This card, alright, this has to be one I get wrong. This one is a card that is not good. It's just too little impact on the board, and you actually have board space issues as well with it. Even when you have the Remix Totem Carver, and it's this option, it's usually like the worst one to have a lot of the time, compared to the other 3. So, we'll see. What do I have to say?
Next we have Jukebox Totem, a new totem and a mech. 2 mana, 0/4 at the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Silverhand Recruit. So Shaman gets access to dudes. This is a mech and a totem. So if you're playing a Menagerie deck, you somewhat care about this. Also, if you're playing Purator, there are no other totems, so Purator's going to draw extra cards if you're running these in your deck. I think this is actually a pretty good card.
Oh! Oh, he said it. Oh no.
Primal Fin Totem in the past was actually kind of decent. That was a 0-3, which basically had the same.
Yeah, in the past, Jambre. Like, what was it, 5 years ago when not everything had rush, and there was an insane amount of removal when people actually played boards.
In effect, 4 health is a lot harder to remove than 3. We have power crept the game a bit since then, so I can't imagine it's going to be massively stronger than Primal Fin was back then. But Primal Fin was playable, and I imagine this is playable too. Obviously, in Totem Shaman, they want to be probably running this card.
I don't even know if Totem Shaman runs this card, actually. It might be too weak for that deck, too. Oh, we found a card, guys, that I got massively wrong. Here we go.
It's just another good turn 2 play outside of the Chisel. Coin this on turn 1. It's not getting removed. You're going to get a decent amount of value out of it. A couple extra 1/1s. You're going to get board control that way.
I think it's not even that bad for the opponent if you have like a couple of 1/1s generated from this. Like, the thing itself doesn't actually do anything. It's just a 0-4. And you get maybe 1 or 2 1/1s out of it before your board gets cleared. It's not worth it.
Might help your Infuse if you're running Infuse cards too. It helped Flame Tongue Totem a lot. Just being able to spread wide with Flame Tongue is really, really strong. So maybe Totem Shaman drops Party Favor Totems in favor of this, and then they're a bit happier to draw Flame Tongue Totem because of it, just because they're going to have that wide board state. I think it's generally okay. And for Pure Paladin, I think they actually might consider running this. Particularly if they're the dude version, they'll definitely run it. But maybe even the non-dude versions too.
I mean, I don't know if people will try the dude version. Since maybe I should try that. Maybe it is actually okay in that deck. But definitely not in Pure Paladin. They have way better cards. Way more aggressive cards than a 0-4.
Like I was saying for Infuse, it might help a card like Buffet Biggin with its Infuse requirement.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So this is a bit better of a card perhaps if you're running the Totem in your deck. And it's very good with Warhorse Trainer. Summon a dude, follow up with this. Every turn summon another dude. Protects the trainer, gets you ahead more on board.
I mean, that is kind of good. Maybe I should cook up some dude pally.
Pretty nice. But even in not the dedicated dude version of the deck, I think this can still be kind of strong.
Wrong. Very wrong.
Just because it's a good tempo 2-drop for Pure Pally, and it's a good target for buffs. This thing, it's got a lot of health, it's sticky, so you can't like on this. Also, Disco Maul, I guess, or Hand of a Doll, that sort of thing. Pretty lightly.
I mean, they're not that good for buffs.
They to stick around either the dude or the totem itself. So yeah, I think it's a solid card.
No, wrong. You're very wrong. You're a moron. You're doing so well, Jambre. Doing so well on all the other cards. You nailed all of them, and then we fell at the Jukebox Totem. Alright, I think that's enough cards for a video. Obviously, I reviewed a bunch more other ones, but these were the ones I just wanted to highlight. You know, fun to poke fun of yourself, but I think I actually did pretty well this time around on the review. Got most of the impactful cards from the mini set pretty much bang on. Even predicting the decks that they go in as well. So yeah, pretty happy with myself. Obviously, can't get everything right though. So we're going to be doing reviews of the new set as the cards come out. So stay tuned for them, and maybe, who knows, I'll get them ones wrong too. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you guys next time.